So when you're 70% confident, you're 30% doubtful. And that doubt changes your skill level every time. And directly to your point, how do we fix that doubt? Typically coping mechanisms that are workarounds to try and get around the doubt versus going straight to the source of the problem, which is our thinking.
Hey, welcome to 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. We're a father-son leadership podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And there's a lot of them, folks. We were just talking in the green room in hindsight, looking forward. How you like that? Dang. I need to do a lot more of that in hindsight, looking forward. That's like spinning around. That's the old 360. We're hoping everything is well after the elections because yes, we are pre-election and we were making sure that we had all submitted our votes because every vote counts, folks. If you didn't,
yes, sir.
Gummit, it's too late now when you're listening to me. But we just gave Camden a little nudge. Heck, there may even be a little Cam and Jessica running. Well, she won't be running around.
No. But by the time this comes out, oh my gosh, that's another one of those reality checks. I've been getting a lot of those. And that is definitely one. She will be here one way or the other.
Well, I just blew Camden's mind. Now he's going to flip out the rest of the show. So
my mind was blown around 7 p.m. last night. I'll tell you the truth. Yeah.
He's going to have pink dresses and lots of lace and bows going around. Those hats are going to be changed out for bows, folks. So,
yes, sir.
Keep an eye on the YouTube channel. Oh, dang it! I'm not supposed to say am I?
That's all right.
By the way, Robin, do not use the in front of YouTube. And YouTube is one word too. By the way.
Okay, so noted. I got it.
Yeah, just want to save you the embarrassment that I have been ridiculed about
Dad,
a couple times.
Dad, I hate to break it to you, but any folks watching on YouTube, they know you say the YouTube. They're looking at you.
Yeah,
you're not hiding your age.
Well, and they're probably not surprised I said that either.
Yes, sir. Exactly.
Can we still say the Facebook though, or is that not working?
See, we covered that one also. That one's even old. That one, actually, I got to say, because I was making fun of you, Dad. The Facebook is actually, I would say that's more accurate because at least it was the Facebook when it started. Okay. I don't know if it was ever the YouTube. I think that's just an old man colloquialism or something.
Yes. Well, speaking of colloquialisms or whatever the hell that word is,
there's a $10 word for you at 8 or 9 a.m.
No kidding. Robin, man, it is good to see you. And I got to ask you something that's completely off subject from what we normally talk about. The rivalry is started. Folks, if y'all didn't know, Robin went to this small school in Austin, Texas.
The University of Texas.
Oh, no, little you. Come on, man. All right. So, wow, Camden, the math on that and when this show is coming out, are we before or after that game?
Oh, it's going to be real close. It's going to be real close.
So timeline for everybody, we're just coming off of the Georgia law. So it's not really the best time to be raising the horns, as we're recording this, but hopefully fortune will smile on us in these coming weeks.
Yeah. That was,
I got to ask, and I know I'm going further down the rabbit hole. Is it y'all playing Thanksgiving?
No, it's Saturday of Thanksgiving.
The Saturday after. Okay. So the usual date. Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if y'all are back into traditions or not. Because I know TU threw a little hissy fit when y'all went to the SEC or something like.
Well, there's a lot more to it than that.
Oh yeah, a lot of hissy fits back and forth. From what I can tell.
Joke on that, couldn't we, Robin?
Well, you're going to laugh, and I wouldn't otherwise disclose this, but my son is at A&M. And so 2 Longhorns birthed an Aggie, and I'm not quite sure how that came about, but A house divided against itself cannot stand.
Oh my. Well, my boss, one of my bosses later in my career was Admiral Bill McRaven,
Yep.
and around November, the smack talking got pretty loud.
Yep.
Let's just say. So, jeepers, now I got to bring us all the way back to what I wanted to talk about, and the shift. I mean, if you want to share a little bit about the story of that life-changing event in Kenya. I'm anxious to. I mean, honestly, I read a snippet of it and I was like, "Holy crap! I wish I would have read that part earlier." And then I probably would have read more of the book before we got on here. But man, so many people have a life-changing event and then they don't change. The infamous God, if you'll save me now, I'll do X. I'll be that guy who does X, right? Just please save me now. God saves them. What do they do to go back and do the same thing?
Yeah.
Give us some snippets of that, please, Robin.
Yeah, you bet. So I really appreciate you guys having me on. And we've got a couple of mutual friends that I had shared this book that we'll talk about later called The Reluctant Disciple, which is a fictional parable that is inspired by this event that you're talking about. And, I think about the veterans that, you're associated with and that might be listeners of this podcast. And I kind of bring my story humbly to the table because their service in defense of our country and the experiences that they've had. And so mine was, each of our experiences is relative to us. And I'm just little old Robin Pugh, however many years ago, and I find myself on a missions trip with our church to a village called Juthini in Kenya. It's about 4 hours from Nairobi. There were 13 of us. We were there for a water project that we were going to be working on. You kind of heard the story. The young girls typically are the ones that will go out and find the water, 5-10 miles away and then have to walk it back. And so then they don't have education. Just there's a whole plight from a clean water perspective. And on the first night where we had gone into the village to be welcomed by this group that we were going to be serving, when we were coming out of the bush back to the tarmac road where we were staying in a hotel or Africa for a hotel, our group got stopped, and it was a rogue band of thugs. And we were held against our will for about an hour and a half. We're not exactly sure the amount of time, just because they had taken everything from us. And I literally was sitting there in what ended up being kind of towards the end, and they had been exceptionally verbally brutal and then physically brutal to us. And I don't even like to say that I was mishandled, because in comparison, they were beating the holy tar out of the Africans that were with us, both the expats that were coming with us on the trip, as well as our in-country hosts. And so, of course, by any standard, it was physical mistreatment, but just to watch what they did in brutalizing the Africans, their fellow countrymen that were with us, really was incredible. And we don't really tell a lot of the brutal details of it. I just like to help people say, you know what, conjure up a movie scene. And that's exactly what it was. Machetes, machine guns, lead pipes, just kind of gross, broken evil, just sort of speaking over us. And the crux of the story for me, when you're talking about the changed life, the circumstance that changes your life, they stand us up at the very end. They do this very official police pat down, and they said, "Oh, do not worry, we will not hurt you," which completely betrayed everything that they had been doing for the past hour and a half.
Yeah.
And then they laid us face down in the ditch by the side of the road. And so you don't have to watch too many movies to know that the ditch is kind of the last place
Mm-hmm.
And there were a number of things that ran through my head, but I landed on this one thing, that the purpose of my life was going to be my death, because in my death, there was going to be a media light that was shined on this region. This evil that was gripping us, they had been lying in wait for us. They had been, given the heads up that we were coming. And that evil, God would use that light to eradicate the evil. And so the whole time I was praying, save me, save me, save me, save us, save us, save us. And I was like, okay, Lord, if this is your will, then I give you my life right here in this ditch. And I didn't make any transaction. I didn't say, please save me and I'll do this. Like, it didn't dawn on me to sort of bargain in that way for whatever reason.
Right.
And I just said, if this is your plan, I submit to it. And this transcendental peace came over me. And I sort of said the Lord's Prayer as a type of last rites, maybe. I don't know. And I got to deliver us from evil. And my buddy John came over me. He was from the other van and basically said, we can go. And so we shoved 13 people into the two vans. First van was disabled, shoved 13 people into a 6-person van. The bad guys had been spooked away because there was a set of headlights coming down the rutted out road.
Mm.
Wow.
They didn't know who the headlights were. We didn't know who the headlights were. So we were scrambling. John's got his hand on my back. We're the last two to get into the van. Headlights catch up to us, pass us. I'm looking at the red brake lights of an all white delivery van. Moments earlier, deliver us from evil. There's a delivery van standing in the gap between us and the bad guys. 10:30 at night, middle of the bush, no addresses, no homes. We'd see no cars going in, no cars going out. And God had miraculously provided. And so just as the kind of conclusion thought for the story, which is, much longer, but basically I was like, okay, wait, Lord, in my own personal debrief, if the purpose of my life was my death and you miraculously saved me, first of all, thank you. Good on you. Like that's a good one.
Yeah. Thanks, God.
Yep.
But what's the purpose of my life? It's the question every single person on the planet asks themselves at least once in their journey. And not audibly, but the impression of my heart, God said, Robin, tonight I do not demand your life. Knowing that you would give it to me is all that I ask. Get up, dust yourself off, and let's get to work. Everything was different from that moment forward.
I'm curious because I think, Dad, like you're talking about people have, those life-changing moments and then they don't make the change. The other layer to that came on with that question, Dad, was the how much you may be primed for that change. And Robin, I what I mean by that is the idea of, were you looking for the moment? And obviously this is a heck of a moment. Don't get me wrong. It's not what you were looking for, I'm sure. But were you going through that search and then this moment was okay, hey, now this is what I was looking for? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, because when this happened and was significant in the way that it did cause me to sort of look back and reflect, like how did I get to this place? Because only one night earlier, I was literally in my bed in Dallas, Texas, and here I was in this ditch in Kenya. Like, how did this happen? And what was revealed to me, what God sort of revealed to me, was that there was a set of events in the 12 months, almost to the day, leading up to this very specific, what I refer to as a near-death experience. Mm-hmm. And each of those events, my grandmother passed away, which was significant. I had joined a Bible study where I was truly being discipled for the very first time, even though I had grown up in the church. I had been fired from a job. I was on the board of a nonprofit and ended up stepping outside my comfort zone to raise a considerable amount of money that I couldn't have ever done on my own. These short little stories were all building up to this event that was in August of 2007, which end up being these stories that are in The Reluctant Disciple. So Each of our lives is the fifth gospel. Each of us is uniquely made, and we are our own unique expression of the gospel. We're either here for a reason or we're not. And if he's got us here for a reason, he would express himself through us. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Otis. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Cam. This was my fifth gospel. And so we have a story, a testimony to share with others to encourage them in the faith.
I have never heard that, and I want to call my buddy Craig up. Craig Glass leads a men's ministry here in town, and I can't wait to call him up and run that by him, because I just have to wonder on the same wavelength of that fifth gospel. That's really a great way of thinking about it. The thing that's coming to my mind, back to the same sort of question of God save me, I'll do this, the transactional thing. How hard was it when you came back to, good old US of A, and the life that you were in just a day or two before? It's still everything exactly the same. The chair is where you left it. The wife, the kids, the pictures on the wall. How did you drive through that change that happened and continue that path?
Yeah. So, that's such a good word picture, because when I got back, everything was still the same. And yet in 72 hours, like we left on a Monday and we were back in Dallas by Saturday. I mean, so just think about getting to Kenya and back. Like, it was just crazy, but I was forever changed. The picture that came to mind when you were asking that question was new wine, old wineskin. And so, they say you can't pour new wine into an old wineskin because it cracks. I don't know all the details, but you've got to have a new wineskin within which to pour that new wine. And so I would say that there was some trauma and healing that had to happen. So once I got past that, I was faced every day with choices to either go back to the old wineskin or go to the new wineskin. What do they say? Old habits die hard, or the muscle memory that you have. Cam, think of all the athletes that you work with, and just that's what they're gearing their bodies and their mind for, is to have that muscle memory. But if you desire to be more faithful, to abide in the Lord, to answer his invitation to do things, chances are good it's going to be counterintuitive to the way that you want to do it, you used to do it, you've always done it. So I would say it's been a really long process, Otis, to just make different changes and create new routines, not something that was just kind of a snap thing, because the chair was in the same place and everything was the same, but I was different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're spot on with the athlete comparison, because I think I've talked about this on the show before, that it'll happen at the college level. You get kids who have played a decent amount of rugby, and they can pass the ball pretty well, and then you look at them, you're like, you're passing wrong. And it's like, we're going to break your pass. You're going to hate me for about 4 months, and then your pass is going to be perfect. But it's like, we are going to have to break that down. Could you talk some about identifying those different pieces? Because I think that's one piece that's so interesting. Take what in whatever context it comes, wanting to change your life, wanting to live a better life. It's like, okay, cool. Hey, I'm a changed man. I'm going to be better. What am I doing? Am I moving the chair, or what's going on here?
Yeah. Am I moving the chair? Are we going to get a different chair? Yeah. I mean,
exactly.
To just continue Otis's analogy, all of us are standing up right now, so nobody has a chair, which makes me
How ironic is that, huh?
Yeah, it is. Yep. There it is. We don't need any chair.
That's the change. That's the real change, Robin.
There you go. I run a leadership development firm, which I started shortly after this particular event. So if the Lord said, get up, dust yourself off, and let's get to work, the vocation that he provided me was as an executive coach. So I used to build businesses as an entrepreneur, having a lot in common with those entrepreneurs and solopreneurs that are your listeners. And yet I used to build businesses. Now I build into the leaders who build businesses. Mm-hmm. And so that very specific thing that you're talking about, which is you're doing this a certain way. You're passing the ball and it's gotten you this far. You won the state championship in high school, but now you're trying to play D1. Your pass is wrong. We got to break it down and rebuild it. So from a leader perspective, just thinking about the entrepreneurs, if you're not getting the result that you want, typically the leaders that I work with just double down and they either grind and try and do the same thing, expecting a different result, or they'll just change their activity. And what we do is we actually help them change the way they think about the activity. So the first book that I wrote is called Performance Intelligence at Work, and it's the principles of sports psychology brought to the business world. Co-authored it with a PhD sports psychologist, Julie Bell. It's deep science, simple at its core. Thoughts lead to actions, actions lead to results. And so we would go in with that leader, with that basketball player and say, okay, why are you playing basketball? Okay, great. This is the way you've been passing the ball. We're going to break that down. But you've also got to get them in the right frame of mind to be able to go through that 4 months that you just described in order to get the new result. Famously, Tiger Woods back in the day was already winning everything. And his swing coach said, if you want to compete against your potential, we're going to take 2 years, break down your swing. You won't perform like you did, but once you finish that, you'll be able to perform at heights that nobody has ever seen. And so that's what we do from a leadership standpoint, because leadership bad habits are ingrained and typically imprinted by the leaders that we've had before.
Yep.
Yeah, that's so important to understand. Even our parenting skills are imprinted from the parenting environment that we grow up in. How did you, because
can I add something there? Sorry, just a little thought before you go, Dad. I was just going to say, because we talked about this before, it's the idea of all of our behaviors are just coping mechanisms from different situations we've been in. Like, it's like, if I had a crappy leader, then that's how I learned how to behave under a leader. And so I'm going to lead in that way because that's my understanding of leadership. Just like if you're from a broken home, your understanding of what a marriage might look like, what a home should look like might be different. And those kind of things. It's all just coping mechanisms. So totally spot on. Yeah, go ahead, Dad.
No, go.
Robin, go.
Well, one of the things that I've discovered in the work that I've done with leaders is that all successful leaders experience doubt at some point in their career. And I know this anecdotally for all the coaching sessions and leadership development programs that we do. A year ago, we actually hired a group to do a quantifiable study. Like, is this just anecdotal or is there science here? And so 97% of the control group, disclosed that they have experienced leadership doubt at some point in their career. So when you're 70% confident, so think about your athletes, 70% confident, which sounds like a lot, you're 30% doubtful. And that doubt changes your skill level every time. Yeah. And directly to your point, how do we fix that doubt? Typically coping mechanisms that are workarounds to try and get around the doubt versus going straight to the source of the problem, which is our thinking.
And to go one more layer on that, and that's the same thing I see a bunch coaching, is the uncoachable kids, they're not jerks. Like, for the most part, I've had a couple jerks I've coached, but they're not jerks. What it is they are insecure about their playing ability, and they don't like being held a mirror of, hey, you could have ran that line better. Hey, you should have kicked it there. Why'd you kick it over here? They don't like that mirror being held up to them because they're insecure, just like you're saying there, and that doubt can really eat away at it. So yeah, spot on there.
Doubt can be defeated. Confidence can be trained, creating that new muscle memory for the thinking and the actions that give you the results that you want. Consistent, elite performance results.
So what I wanted to talk about, and as much as I want to continue to dive down that, and I think we'll circle back around into it, it is obviously you had some leader development in the entrepreneur journey before you became an executive coach. What were some key elements or even individuals that you had the opportunity to work with before you pivoted?
Yeah. So trained as an attorney, went to law school, practiced law for 5 years. Guess what they don't teach you in law school? How to be a leader. In fact, what they teach you at law school is how to be right, even when you're not right. And that is not a good look for leaders. And so I was at a real deficit when we get into these businesses that my partners and I started. And I ended up sort of gravitating to the operations side of the business, where the majority of the people, the staff that we ended up hiring and bringing onto the team would report to me. Well, I would say to you as a competitor wanting to win, think about entrepreneurs. You see a gap in the marketplace. You think your idea is going to win. I mean, high competitive nature. I couldn't get all of these people to do what I asked them to do and to do it well. And so I just kept becoming more clear, and they got further and further away. And I'm like, what is the deal? And so that competitive win-lose, which of course leadership is not win-lose, but just my way of thinking about it. I said, I either am going to give up being a leader, or I've got to get good at what I'm supposed to be good at, which is leading these people. So your question just about training for leadership, I didn't have any formal training. In fact, the leaders that I had been under up to that point were probably what not to do leadership lessons. And I just started studying. And the first book that I recall reading that really imprinted was Pat Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of Team. Mm-hmm. And it's just classic now, 20, 25 years later. And that just started my journey of just absorbing as much as I could and then taking it and putting it into practice, and sometimes succeeding, a lot of the time failing. And so kind of hard knocks, if you will.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, so then the path goes from figuring out how to lead to, and I'll put this word in your mouth, creating leaders. And that's a whole different subject area also. I mean, because if you're a good leader, you're creating leaders in your team and periphery, but now you're directly targeting that. And that's a much different approach. Talk a little bit about that shift and how you handle it.
Yeah. So I'm coming off of this Kenya experience, this near-death experience, new wine, old wineskin. And I'm in my late 30s, and I get this, this vision, this idea to be an executive coach. Had met Julie, the co-author of the book, trained under her. So I got some skills, some competency. We then co-authored the book. McGraw-Hill publishes it. I say, okay, I'm ready to hang out my shingle. Well, who in the world is going to hire a 38-year-old kid to be their leadership development coach when most of the world at that point in time, from a leadership standpoint, was run by baby boomers? Mm-hmm. And so it seemed really ridiculous. And yet I was encouraged in this newfound faith, if you will. And I've been praying 3 things for 14 years. God, if you're handing out supernatural wisdom, I want to be in that line. Like, whatever you've got, just download it to me if you deem me worthy. I'm an impure vessel, but I'll do the best I can. Mm-hmm. And then put me in the company of influencers, number 2. Mm-hmm. And then number 3, so that I can influence those influencers with your wisdom. And that word influencer has gotten kind of changed up a little bit. I don't mean like influencer from a social media standpoint, from a marketplace standpoint. So think of all the entrepreneurs that are listening to this. They're not called to vocational ministry. They're called to the marketplace. And so the deal is, I don't know who's an influencer, meaning only God can really determine who he wants to have this wisdom so that they can influence whoever it is that he's, placed in their path. So I don't pick them. They pick me, because only people who are lifelong learners, who are interested in developing themselves and care about their people, seek out somebody like me. So I just step forward for those that come to the table for, asking for that, doing the best I can, wisdom, influence the influencers with his wisdom. So that was really, there's a lot more behind it that is a competency-based approach, but that's the lead foot for me in that transition based on the question that you asked.
Talking about some of the stuff behind it, what comes to mind there is then how do you start to build your plan, build the business around that? Because I think we're almost getting back to, this is the last episode we recorded, Dad, when we talked about this, but it's like sitting on the front porch praying for rain instead of digging the well type of thing. There is that balance of asking for it, asking to be shown, but then also like, all right, well, I gotta, I might have to take out some Google ads to find these influencers or whatever the path is forward. Could you talk about how you got to that point?
Yeah. So I like that analogy, like, hey, give me some rain. It's like, well, I gave you a shovel and there's water 20 feet below you. I've given you everything that you need. I don't, while that's a cute sort of analogy, because it's like, hey, we got to get in the game and we got to go. Let's rely on him to provide the provision, but let's rely on the fact that, or act as if it relies on us, right? So we're faithful about how he's Proverbs 16:9. Heart of man plans his way, God directs his steps. It's just a kind of beautiful combination of that well example that you just gave. Mm-hmm. So specific answer is, I prayed, hey, God, you just put in my path people that are going to be in front of me. I did the very best job I could for the people that were in front of me because they were going to be the referral source. And then I just put myself in places where I would be able to meet people and just communicate that this is what I did. So they told two friends and they told two friends, and I would just say, hey, who do you think I need to know? And so that's my grabbing the shovel and digging the well, is getting outside. We have a saying here at the office, every time we get out of the office, good things happen. And so we're not behind the computer, we're not behind the desk, like we're out in the world, and that's how people find us. And so it's not any better or more strategic a plan than that, and it has worked out according to his plan to this point.
Yeah, there's so much truth to that fundamental factor of getting out from behind the computer. I think in today's age of content and social media and those things only cost you time and if you're using an app to edit it or whatever, so everybody thinks if you just keep posting, you're going to get there, but in the end it's still the human connection. I was having this conversation with Nancy Fox. I'm trying to remember the name of her business now. I can't think of her in business. I'm very proud I remember her name. And I was talking about, well, how did you kick it off? It's the exact same thing. She was at some networking thing, started talking with somebody, and he was like, wow, your skills and what you do are exactly what I need in the team here. It wasn't a social media post or anything like that. It was that personal reaction or personal interaction. So that's such a great, I don't know whether you call it a mantra for the team or what.
Well, I'll think about it on behalf of your listeners who are entrepreneurs, just a real simple framework. There is active business development activities and there are passive business development activities. And so I learned this lesson with my partner group. There was one of our founders in one of our businesses, and he loved the logo and he loved the hats and he loved the stickers and the t-shirts. And we were playing business and we thought we were doing business, but we were not. And that branding was important as it relates to being able to communicate to people that this is a real business, but it was passive business development activities. So I post on LinkedIn in order to have coffee with X thousands of people each day to support them right where they are. Like, hey, I'm just reminding you that this is what I do, but I come serving you each day, not trying to get anywhere. That's a passive activity versus an active activity where we host a table at an event and there's 300 people there and we get there early and we meet people. I'm not glad handing and passing out business cards, but I am putting myself in orbit, because when you put yourself in orbit, good things happen.
Wanted to shift gears a little bit, talking about overcoming doubt earlier. I think, again, an interesting piece of the idea of, a life-changing moment and making those changes in your life. There's the driver is an interesting thing to me. And the example I would give, and I know it doesn't quite square, or it's not perfectly the same, but I think it squares up well, which is, we talked about it of, work beats worry, of the idea of it's like, hey, if you're worried about something, if you're feeling anxious, like work on the things that you can control. And by being productive with that, it helps you to feel better. Very, very true. I use that myself. I could also tell you that as somebody who deals with a lot of anxiety, that's not it. There's more to it. You have to not only work, but also work through the reason why you feel that way. Could you talk some about your experience with that? Because you could pour your whole life into the work and then you're still never really, addressing what's going on inside of you. Could you talk about your experience there?
Yeah. So little coachy phrase that we use is activities times effectiveness equals results. So part of your question is talking about what's your formula for success? Meaning, what's the 10-step process that you have honed that actually gives you the results that you want, which typically requires a lot of trial and error. And so when people just go in and they grind and they think, oh my gosh, I worked 12 hours today, why am I not getting the results? I'm like, well, are you working on the things that you should be working on? They're like, what do you mean? And so you've really got to figure out what is I just call it your formula for success, meaning the results that you want, because then you know that your effort is either efficient or productive. You understand that it's in the realm of giving you the results that you want. So there's a purpose piece in there. I'm doing this methodical thing because I know it's step 4 of this process to generate the results. Okay. Which answers in my mind, or for me, solves part of the anxiousness about, am I really doing this the right way? And is it going to give me the results? What happens is this is a hot sports take based on my experience. We're more apt to day trade our activities and switch to try and do something else than actually reflect on why we're thinking and feeling the not so great thing about step 3. Well, I'll just swap it out and I'll do something else and see if that gives me the result. And I watch people not really put anything together over time because their efforts never get to compound on themselves. Because they don't believe, they don't trust, or coping mechanisms or doubt. And so looking back and reflecting and spending time with yourself, we call it leadership thinking time. We say 90 minutes every week, and we're intentionally saying 90 minutes to offend your senses of calendar, because nobody even has time to go to the bathroom or eat lunch, which you should do both of those in addition to leadership thinking time. You've got to work on the business in addition to working in the business. And so, Cam, if you've got a certain set of thoughts that may create anxiety or energy or creativity, you need to harness those in this special time that we call leadership thinking time, as opposed to just being on the hamster wheel Monday through Friday and looking up going, how come it wasn't more productive than I wanted it to be?
Yep. Love that.
Does that help with what your question was?
Yeah. 100% on that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's such I think the 90-minute a week, I love that time frame too. Cause that does push the envelope in the mental aspect of that leader, and 90 minutes for myself. What about my team? Even the good leader, right? Even the good leader is like, well, I can't take that time for myself. I know you want to comment on this, but I was just reflecting on talking with a CEO of a business several years ago and telling them, hey, this is what we do, develop leaders, and he was like, man, that's something I could really use. But you know what? I'm going to spend the money on it. I think what was it? It was something like getting a new insurance policy for the team or something like that. And it was really interesting. I was like, wow, okay. All right. Yeah. So I thought I'll pause there, Robin, because I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's transaction versus transformation, and so much of the day-to-day life of the CEO is transaction. I mean, you got to make sure that you have insurance and that the rent is paid and that you're doing the activities, transacting business. But where's the transformation piece? I don't know if you guys have been watching Game Day over the past 3-4 weeks, but they've been cutting to Saban, who's been giving his perspective on transactional coaching versus transformational coaching. Mm-hmm. And it was about the 2000, 2001, if I've got it right. And he said, the minute that I moved from being, these are my words, but being attached to the outcome, the win, and focusing on being committed to the process to generate the outcome, that's when it all changed for me. So he is a transformational coach because he's taking these young kids and his coaching staff and himself, and he's focusing on every single little detail, which then creates this transformation through discipline and routine, and almost says to the effect, we'll let the outcome take care of itself. Mm-hmm. Well, he has a long track record of success by just letting the outcome take care of itself, because he's focused on the process to generate the outcome, which is really hard for an entrepreneur because they have a vision for what the world is going to look like when their product and their service is at full maturation. So they live out into the future, which is very difficult to let that go and come back to the present day to day in order to get good at what you're supposed to be good at in order to get that result.
Could you talk some about specifically with that example and being tied to the results? I think, yeah, as a coach, I definitely relate to that as a coach. But then as an entrepreneur, I've been through this where it's really hard because whether you're really affecting people and solving a good problem, like doing all the things that, we entrepreneurs like to think we're doing, the measuring stick is still kind of that dollar amount. Even if I help 1 million people, it's like, yeah, no one hears that. They hear that it's $100 million company. Like, there's, and gosh, I guess you can help a person for $100 each. We're not going to talk that business plan. But the idea there that it's like you're kind of hamstrung to the results being financial with that. What's your process coaching wise to help people to break that connection?
Yeah, so we have a 5-part methodology that is a business growth methodology. It's vision, strategy, identity, purpose, and execution. There is nothing new under the sun, but we've kind of stitched it together in a particular way that sees these business owners and leaders really transform their businesses. The very first step directly, responds to your question is vision. What is your vision out into the future? And some leaders will come with a quantitative. I want $5 million. Great. Why? What does that actually mean? And so, Larson comes in and he says 5 million, and he was a professional services organization. And the reason that he wanted $5 million is that was a book of business that represented professional independence, because he could take that book of business to any other platform. Then I get Renee comes in, and I said, okay, what's your vision? And she said, I want freedom. I was like, okay, what's your number? So there's a qualitative description, and I said, wanting the quantitative. She goes, Robin, I'm not a numbers person. I was like, you have a consumer packaged goods company that you started from zero, and you've got X million dollar in top line revenue. Don't tell me you're not a numbers person. And what we identified was a future revenue number that was a certain amount of growth, but not greater than that, because that dollar amount represented what she equated freedom to be. I want to spend a month in South Africa. I want a week every month in, this location where her business, was really thriving. So she described her freedom, but she didn't have a quantifiable amount to it. So when you give the example, I helped, 100,000 people, it's got to be commercially viable. Mm-hmm. Like if all we're doing is helping people, let's call it a nonprofit and get on down the road. But if it's a commercially viable, you've got to have the $5 million and the professional independence, or you've got to have the $5 million and the leadership freedom to do what you want to do. Those two have to come together, two sides of the same coin, in order to have a complete vision, a target, a place, a destination out into the future that you're aligning your strategies to go achieve.
And then just to kind of round it back out, because you covered a lot there, but the piece of the question I think you missed a little, or I didn't quite answer, is a better way to put it, is the healthier approach there. Then you have to understand that both of those, two sides of the same coin, but it's like you're not thinking about the financial one as much. You're treating it almost like that's the management me versus when I think about the dreams, the aspirations, all this kind of stuff, it's more the qualitative side.
Yeah. So when I hear you ask that question the second time, so sorry that I missed it, but you're saying when you're setting aside the outcome, meaning, are you setting aside the dollar amount and it doesn't matter what amount we end up getting?
Yeah, what I mean here, I'll just give an example. So I that freedom for me, let's just say it's $10 million annual revenue for the business, right? That number, then, even though I'm thinking about freedom, I'm thinking about that, the healthier version of the outcome, thinking about time with my family, all those kind of things. There's still a dollar amount, which I think opens you up to then that more negative side of the growth, which is the looking for the financial, looking for it in a very transactional way rather than the transformational. Does that make more sense?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is that there's a way of thinking about it that feels binary. I'm either thinking about it or I'm not thinking about it. Mm-hmm. Go plant your flag 3 years out that you're going to have $10 million in revenue. And then you and I are going to have multiple coaching sessions where we determine the 3 strategies that are more likely than not going to help you achieve that $10 million at the 36th month. So we are keeping it in mind, and then we're figuring out the strategies. Then we're going to create an execution plan that makes sure that you're going to be able to, on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, move each of those 3 strategies forward. And the best way to make sure that execution plan is effective is if those strategies are consistent with your identity, how you're built, your strengths, what you bring to the table, and your team, as well as your why. Why are you shooting for the growth of the business? Because now you have the intrinsic motivation and the skill, the strength, to be able to execute on that on a day-to-day basis. You're not forgetting the $10 million, but you're coming back to your execution plan, just like your basketball pass. We're going to break down your pass so that you can pass the ball correctly, all with the goal that they're going to be on a team who wins the tournament. Right. But we're breaking it down back here. They don't forget their competitive spirit of wanting to win or get the $10 million in revenue, but we're breaking it down the steps, because I can't do anything about $10 million right now, but I can do everything that I need to do to learn how to pass the ball differently.
Love that. That's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you. glad I followed up on it.
Sorry I missed you the first time around.
No, because it was also good. That's one of those where it's like, that's the tricky thing as the host is I'm like, also like, God, that was a really good one, but also I want to drill a little bit more.
Okay. Thanks for giving me a take 2 on that.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, and that's the benefit of being the host. You can go, yeah, let's go back around. And
yes, sir.
Because, and that's so important. I think, Robin, is, the mountaintop, you want to get to the mountaintop. Well, there's an infinite number of paths, and choose one. And your rule of 3, my favorite thing, Camden can tell you, rule of 3 from rugby and other things. It's having the 3 strategies to get there, and whichever one starts to take off, man, pile on, right? Fuel that fire. And such a great thing. And I'm not going to talk about Nick Saban. It's something I learned. Yeah. He can
heresy. Football heresy right here.
Yes, I can't even believe he brought his name up.
Well, now that he's moved to the broadcasting, can he not be sort of,
I'm still dealing with it.
Okay. First season. I get it.
Yep.
So give me
him and Belichick. It's tough. It's a tough transition.
Now I'm out. You say Belichick, I'm out.
There we go. Oh man, yeah. I'm going to go with what I learned as your formula, the mathematical formula. Activities times effectiveness equals results. And I was, the old ORSA pod in me, and folks, you don't know what that means. It's operations research systems analysis. I was envisioning the spreadsheet that would help measure that and have those results coming out. And I was like, wow, all right. Look out. We might be building a pivot table spreadsheet to measure results and activities. And yes, because you can measure anything if you choose to. Just ask an orsapod. Camden, how about you? What'd you learn?
Yeah, a few really, really good nuggets. But I think my favorite is, talking about, being out coaching, whether it's rugby or anything else, the idea of like, hey, we're going to break your pass. And I think that's an approach to leadership that we might need to take with Tribe and Purpose, Dad, because I think some people need to be looked in the face and told, we're going to need to break your leadership. And it's going to suck for a little while, but we'll get you back. Because just like those kids out there passing the rugby ball around, they think they got a good pass and they don't. So that's a piece of language that I think we might be using sometime in the messaging.
Awesome. Robin, how about you? What'd you learn?
Yeah, I've got two. First, looking at the wall of hats, and Otis looking at your hat, I've got to up my hat game. So
there we go.
We'll have to send you one. We got to send you one.
There you go. Tribe plus purpose. I love it. And then, the other thing that maybe not so much that I learned, but I was inspired by, there's a header on this screen that I'm looking at. It says Cam and Otis Show, episode 217. And I can't help but think that 216 episodes of pouring into other people has got to have a significant impact. Like if I close my eyes and I think about the United States and I think of like a heat map of all the places of influence, it's possible that all those red circles almost cover the entire United States. And so I'm just very encouraged by your consistency and your effort and just your winsome father-son duo. So it's reminding me of just do what you're called to do and let the impact, take care of itself. Let the result take care of itself. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
I love that. And I learned something else, which is I need to update that tag because that's when we switched to Riverside about a year ago. We're in the 380s now. And I had not noticed that says episode 217. So that is funny.
Look how inspired I was at 217. My goodness. At 380, I'm blown.
Dad, we could have hung up the microphones, I guess.
There you go. Robin, how do folks find you, get in contact with you, learn more about what y'all got going on?
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. So robinpugh.com, that's ROBINPOU.com, is our business site. And so you were so gracious to really dive in on the leadership development side. And that's where people can discover the coaching and the leadership development that we do. So robinpugh.com, or just go to LinkedIn and they can find it there. The start of the podcast, which was the book, The Reluctant Disciple, which we touched on, is just this obedience project that I have undertaken because writing a fictional parable is not necessarily my forte, and yet God had a story that he wanted out. So the reluctantdisciple.com, easy way to do it, go to Amazon and just type in Robin Pugh, it'll come up. So those are a couple of different ways that y'all can, that your audience can check it out, and I'll give you some stuff that you can put in the show notes as well.
Great. Robin, thank you so much for your time and joking around with us when we circle back around to this being fall and Texas and football.
Absolutely. Enough to keep us busy.
That's right. Yeah. Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank y'all for listening to today's episode of 10X Your Team with Cam Otis, and a special thanks to our guest, Robin Pugh, for joining us today. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at 10X Your Team. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to pass along to other lifelong learners in your tribe so they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, the full archive episodes available at www.10xyourteam.net. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.